You gotta love the football on the continent. Kenya and Tanzania have shown us that they're not just there to make up the numbers, they're actual title contenders. We've looked at Group A and B, let's look at Group C and D. South Africa, what do you make of their first two performances of Chad?
Yeah, look, they've been quite mediocre a little bit if I look at it.
Mediocre?
Yeah, mediocre. I'll tell you why I say mediocre.
Algeria hadn't conceded a goal in so long, but when they played Bafana, they conceded.
We can agree on that, in terms of them pushing Algeria. Algeria has quite quality players in their team, and South Africa has unattached players, 12 of them. So why I say that, I look at the fitness levels, I'm quite impressive that they pushed Algeria to almost the end of the game, but Algeria was actually pushing South Africa in all honesty. So if you look at that alone, for me, I look at the next game that they won, and that tells you that when you look at that game alone, in the second half of it, the fitness levels of the team were quite low, I think that hence Mlifintseki changed the whole entire, not the whole entire team, but to tweak it a little bit to say, you know what, I can tell that Johannes in that midfield is not doing enough, so let me just change this thing a little bit.
So who are your standout players in that, in the first two games?
Of course, at the top of it, you'll have Kutumela on top of it. You have Neo Mayema as well in there. You have Malibongwe Khoza, the youngster that plays for Sundowns. In this time around, he's playing as a CDM, which is his original position that he plays usually. But at Sundowns, they play him as a CB. So in this one, he's quite comfortable playing in a role that he's much used to. But you can tell he's got a little bit of fewer elements that are not there because he hasn't played in that position for quite some time. And it's an international space. It's different from a domestic point of view.
Yes, okay, now let's look at Group D because there was an interesting game between Congo and Senegal that ended in a 1-1 draw. Dejan Musavu, his early strike stunned Senegal, and Senegal came back to equalize in that game. Yeah. Then there was that other game we didn't want to talk about.
You're running away from.
You see, Nigeria and Ghana have a rivalry between them. We always talk about who has the better jollof, who plays the better football.
Before you even continue, let me stop you there. The previous shows I've mentioned Eric Chelle, and I said to you how unfit Eric Chelle is for this Nigerian team. Both for the guys that are the first team, that are playing the qualifiers, that are playing AFCON, and for this team that is playing in the local tournament, which is the Chen tournament, So I look at this team and I said to you, off camera, I said a good dancer knows when to leave the floor,
When to leave the floor. But, I was going to raise the point that Nigeria lost to Sudan. Sudan is coached by a Ghanaian by the name of James Kwesu Apia.
Yeah.
And that rubbed a bit of salt into the injury, It felt like Nigeria lost to both Sudan and Ghana at the same time.
Nigeria has so many things that are poor. They are technically poor. They're tactically poor. They are structurally poor. So if you look at that alone...
Okay, so is it that the league is so poor and that shone through in the team?
But we can't put that to argument and say the league is so poor. You've got players that have won a league in the team that are Remo Stars.
From Remo Stars, yeah. And they made majority of the team, really. So why were they playing like they didn't know each other?
Ideally, you could say in terms of the coaching wasn't there. Sometimes there's what we call in football autopilot coaching. So I think the players are coaching themselves literally. So I said to you earlier on, Eric Chelle is not a coach to be in the team. Again, I want to point reference a certain player into the team, Leonard Ngenge. He plays for Remo Stars as well. Plays 45 minutes against Sudan.
Okay.
Scores an own goal. Goes on to create a penalty. If you look at the player's attitude, for me, it begs a question. If I was a Nigerian federation, I'd be investigating to find out exactly what's going on here, because there's no way a Nigerian team can play like this. I'm not trying to promote Nigeria and say Nigeria are better than all the other nations that are here, but Nigeria has been a nation of quality when it comes to football. They produce such good players. Your JJ or coaches are guys that you can talk about when you're talking about Nigeria. But then again, Eric Chelle, for me, I think he should save his pride and walk away as soon as possible.
All right, so you put the performance the fact that they played like they had blocks of cement in their soccer boots, you put this down to the coaching.
Yeah, definitely.
Not the players on the day they won.
Not entirely. The coaching and his tactical approaches and technical approach of the games is poor. You know, I mean, you look at Sudan. Look at how they played this game against Nigeria. They were literally on Nigeria's case. The first 3 goals they were scored within the first 30 minutes of the game. You know, the first phases of the game. So that tells you that Sudan came prepared for this match, and Nigeria, were they prepared for this match? They were not prepared for this match. So I look at that alone and I say, I think Eric Chelle should wake his way out of the Nigerian squad and stop stressing himself, because we don't want a coach to be having heart attacks here.
Okay, so what impact does this have on him going into the World Cup qualifiers? Does it affect Nigeria going into the World Cup qualifiers?
We need to look at the importance of the CHAN tournament. What is the importance of the CHAN tournament? It's to give local players an opportunity to expose themselves to the first team coach. Now he's there firsthand. Who is he looking at and saying, I'm going to put in the first team? I look at that whole entire team, and I'm sorry to say, there's no player for me that can outclass those guys that are playing in the first team. Again, he needs to go back to the first team and be able to coach those guys. But for me, as a coach in this team, I think this team is way too heavy for him.
All right, let's look at the permutations in Group D. Senegal might not top this group. Congo is there, and Sudan also have a shout. Nigeria's been eliminated.
So the best that can happen here, if you look at the game Sudan-Senegal, I think they can cancel one another on that game.
Yes, I know the teams would want to actually avoid the likes of South Africa, Uganda, and Algeria in Group C. So it's very important to top that group.
Definitely.
Yeah. S.C, thank you so much for joining us on the show today, and hopefully next week we can talk about happier stories, right?
Yeah, much better. Hopefully.
All right, yes, we've taken you through what has been going on in Nairobi. We've taken you through the largest city in Tanzania, Dar es Salaam, the action there. Now, let's find out what's happening in Kampala after the break. Stay tuned.